space. Yes.
And hello, we are live at the Convergence Forum on the beautiful Cape Cod. I am Dr. Jennifer Joe. We're excited to have this opportunity to be at one of the most prestigious, most exciting live conferences with biotech, life science, digital health all coming together. Say hello to my gorgeous host, Dr. Ami Bhatt, as always.
That was a great introduction for this morning. I love it. That's fantastic. So we're at the Wauquasit Resort in Cape Cod, in Chatham, I believe, Cape Cod. And we are
We're not sure where we are.
Because it's right. This resort, can I jump in?
Yes,
If that's all right.
We haven't even introduced.
So welcome.
No, it's okay.
Welcome to Scott Kirshner, master of everything, along with Shane Gilbert, and really the brains behind Convergence Forum.
I used to say we were in Chatham. I always
Okay.
said the Convergence Forum is in Chatham, and then someone said we are actually right over the line in Harwich. And
Oh, what does that mean?
we're part of the resort. Most of the resort is in Harwich, but Chatham, I think, is the town that has like the brand name around here.
I see.
Harwich is not as well known.
Well,
I want to be in Chatham. That's
No, we like being from the wrong side of the tracks. If that's what Harwich is, we're the underdog. Let's take
Yeah,
Harwich.
this resort, I don't know if you saw, this resort just sold this month for like $102 million
Okay.
to new owners. So it's not
Was that
exactly
you?
the wrong
Was
side
that
of the
you and
track.
Shane for
We should have-
Convergence Forum
We should have
permanently?
purchased
That
it,
would've
and
been
we could
great.
do like 365 days of conferences here, right?
We would come. We would come for that.
It's a pretty nice place.
Scott, will you tell our audience a little bit, rather than us telling them, about Convergence Forum, the brilliant name, and the fact that you started this concept long before everybody else thought about silos in biotech and med tech, and you guys recognized the need for people to work together. So maybe a little history on Convergence.
I think like all good experiments, it started with a mistake, right? So we created a conference in 2000 on Nantucket, just across the water that way. And we thought it was an entrepreneurship conference that would encompass everything. It started really with tech and web entrepreneurs, in the .com and post.com phase. And we would try to bring biotech entrepreneurs and medtech entrepreneurs to that event.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized like what would happen is you'd have a biotech entrepreneur talking about, having just taken their company public, and the room would empty out. Like all of the tech entrepreneurs and tech VCs did not care to hear about biotech stories. And so we learned through that mistake that, these are really two separate universes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes they have the same recruiters or lawyers or venture capitalists, but they have a whole different set of concerns. And so for a long time, we would do the Nantucket conference on Nantucket because we had put that in the name.
Mm-hmm.
We started something called the Convergence Forum, and initially did it on Martha's Vineyard because we thought the island thing is kind of fun. When you bring people to an island, they're stuck there for a while.
Yeah, they really bond.
And they bond and they'll stick around. You feel kind of like these islands are small, so you'd feel like you were taking over the island. And the premise of Convergence was, that here in the Boston ecosystem and in the Northeast, we saw really that the worlds of medical devices and biopharma and IT were starting to come together, and diagnostics, right? Like they had all been their own separate little silos, as you said, but they were starting to come together. And obviously people in the large hospital and healthcare systems were starting to get interested in how do we bring some of this innovation into the delivery systems and into the world of payers. And so we just said, let's cast a really broad net and see how we could bring these worlds together.
That's fantastic. So how many years has it been now for the Convergence Forum for our audience?
I think we started the Convergence Forum in 2004, might have been the first year. So I think this is the 19th edition.
That's fantastic.
And here in New England, like maybe once you've done stuff for 15 years or 20 years, it becomes an institution.
Either that or 100 years, something like that.
Maybe
That's
once
right.
MedTech Insights start showing up to podcasts, like that's the signal that it's an institution.
Yeah, I think it's an institution. Yeah, sorry, I was just stepping out to make sure we look good live, and we look amazing.
Oh,
live.
that's good. But I was like, these doors behind us. I don't know if you can hear it on the podcast. The doors behind us.
There's a ghost. There's a ghost that's back there.
Ghost or earthquake. Something's going on.
So we look great. Everything's working. Yay!
Kudos to you, Jennifer.
And so we're excited to have any guests who are watching live. Tell us who they are, where they're watching from, what they're working on, and any questions that you have for Scott, Dr. Bhatt, and me. So thanks everyone for watching. We have Dr. Elizabeth Lewis, who's excited to be listening to MedTech Insights. And we have full guests. Oh, from Cameroon. Wow.
From Cameroon.
All right. People could also
Wonderful.
tell us what the weather is like where they are. Because every morning on Cape Cod sort of starts out with this, like,
Yes.
what do you call it? Like it's a white sheet of fog.
Fog, yeah. Fog.
It looks like a blank canvas out the window where you need a painter to like get to work.
They call it the Gray Lady, right? Like it's
The Gray Lady.
The Gray
that's
Lady.
correct.
It's like this is a thing. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not in Miami.
No. Every
No,
morning
no,
you
there's-
start off with this like blank canvas and it burns off eventually.
Yeah, we're just waiting for the sun to come out. So thinking about the Convergence Forum this time, Scott, there are a couple different things that we have coming. So there's some talk, and we're going to talk with Aya Khalil hopefully tomorrow about AI and its role coming to clinical trials. We're also going to be talking about climate and how large companies can start thinking and contribute in climate. Those are some of the ones that caught my eye. Not that you're going to play favorites, but other ones that you want to make sure people kind of know about out there?
There's a session this morning talking about what did COVID really change about healthcare delivery, right?
Yeah,
like there was a
yes.
lot of kind of battlefield innovations, right, over the last 2 years that felt like they were pointing us maybe in new directions.
Yeah.
You know, it felt like telemedicine was taking over and really kind of finally coming into the spotlight. And now I think the data shows that everybody is
Yeah.
back to practicing in the office
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to talk about what is really changing versus what was a blip. I think some of the other stuff, I mean, people in life sciences are clearly worried about, you know, the funding environment and the IPO environment.
Yeah.
And, you know, you always have these cycles that you see every year at Convergence where, you know, either there's a lot, we're flush with money, or there's not enough money, or it doesn't feel like there's ever a lot of in between.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely a sense of like, you know, if you're a squirrel wanting to have a lot of nuts hoarded away right now to get through the rest of 2022.
Yeah. No, that's very true. You know, it's interesting. One of the conversations that we'll have, and I think Peter Benton from Worldwide Clinical Trials will talk with us tomorrow as well, but is what happens when the market falls to life sciences in terms of funding for trials, funding for companies, because you wonder whether or not that fluctuation is actually affecting our daily ability to actually advance science, right? And I think that's going to be an interesting conversation to have too. Jen, thoughts from you about this weekend? Things that you're excited for? I keep trying to remind us to like talk to each other in the camera, and so, but it's awkward.
Mhm.
You want to turn to
we're
somebody.
working with a new camera.
So we're trying.
I need a rooming cameraman. They haven't budgeted that for me yet.
Is that my new job? No, you don't trust me with the camera. Maybe I'm not sure.
So I'm delighted to be here. Very excited about what everyone's talking about. I'm excited about virtual clinical trials. I think, Scott, you alluded to that, and how we can take this opportunity to really understand how we can deliver virtual clinical trials, have more representation in our clinical trials, specifically for women, underserved communities, communities who have difficulty driving into a hospital to be part of a clinical trial, and minorities. So I think it's a real opportunity. So I'm very excited to learn more about that.
Totally agree. That's an area that I really would like to learn more about. Also, talent. You know, the talent market is
Tight.
extremely
Very
tight
tight,
right now.
yes.
There's a session at lunch today about, I think, called Talent Wars.
Mhm.
You know, I've kind of been thinking about musical chairs as the metaphor for what's happening right now, but I don't quite understand. It feels like there's almost games within games of musical chairs. Every day when I look at LinkedIn, right, there's 20 people who are like, hey, I'm really excited to have just accepted this new job. But I was saying to someone the other day, like, there's both like talent wars of like the people who are super performers and can move around and can write their own ticket right now. But there's also talent wars where the people who are maybe like less competent and are the C and D players can also move around and get jobs. And so I feel like that's a story that doesn't really get told a lot, is like the C and D performers, you know, are either guaranteed full employment right now or can move around. And so like, how are companies sorting out, like, how do you attract those A players and maybe even some of the B players without getting the C and D players?
Yeah, well, so it's interesting also because from the academic standpoint, we've thought a lot about growing your own people. And I know a lot of larger companies do the same, right? You take someone in young and you start to train them up and you say, someday they're going to be able to take this new position with us. that's not necessarily true. And it's not because they're not loyal to you. It's simply because you train them really well in a really great company, and then they see another opportunity. And that's part of what this world of musical chairs is about. But not being able to hold on to some of that. How do you retain that? How do you retain the talent you have that you want to keep and raise? And I can't wait to see what people say.
No, I think that's good. That's like one of the untold stories right now, right? Is that if everybody is getting a call a week, at least from a recruiter, like it does foster this, like, what is my next step in 2022 thinking, not what am I going to be doing at this organization next year and the year after that, right? And that's what I hear through my network, right? Is everybody's texting me and messaging me saying like, hey, can you help me think through this offer that I just got?
Really? I haven't received any texts.
I'm getting it from people who've been in new jobs like 2 months or 3 months, where they're like, hey, I know you just were a reference for me 3 months ago, but should I be thinking about this next offer?
So we're really excited to have Scott here with us. We have more people just hello from Kentucky. Great to hear from Paige McKay from Kentucky. We have a wonderful audience. Does our audience have any questions for Scott today, or anything excited to talk about in here? We're going to get them excited soon.
We're going to start bringing audience members up, in fact, soon.
So maybe we switch Scott out now?
Yeah, I think.
So many
all right.
Unless there was something you should. What's your parting message?
Parting message.
What's the most exciting thing about Convergence Forum?
Well, I was going to say the Twitter hashtag is CV Forum 22. Yes. A lot of the, people share photos, people will share some key quotes and insights, so you can follow the Twitter hashtag. No, I think this is just like a moment of change where we feel like, do we see the light at the end of the tunnel into what people have been saying is post-pandemic for a long time, dealing with kind of some of the talent and financial crunch issues. I mean, it's always an interesting time in life sciences. Question. And I'm just excited to hear like the next speaker that you bring up. I don't know who that is.
It's gonna be Claire Aldrich.
All right, they're sitting on the other side of the camera right now. All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. And thank you for running the forum. All right, Claire, come on up.
Oh yeah, this was like Wheel of Fortune? No.
Price is Right.
Price is right.
That's right.
Thank you for identifying that.
Thank you, Scott.
Scott, thanks so much. And thanks for hosting the conference. All right, Claire, welcome. And thank you
for having me.
Thank you for joining us post coffee, but before breakfast. So we appreciate that.
So a little bit of energy, but not too much.
That's right. Claire, maybe for the sake of our audience, will you just tell them a little bit about you and the company and kind of how you got here?
Absolutely. So I'm Claire Aldrich. I trained as an immunologist, but knew about halfway through graduate school I didn't want to be a bench scientist. So decided that for a variety of reasons that I did graduate school in North Carolina and moved back to Texas. I'm a Texan by raising, and didn't know what I was going to do. And so ended up working over 20 years ago, starting in tech transfer at UT Southwestern Medical Center. And UT Southwestern is just an absolutely fantastic academic medical center, well known for their basic science. And they had really started to put some effort towards commercializing the science coming out of the university. Sadly, much of that science left not just North Texas, but Texas, and went to companies on the coast. So we've spent.
Glad to have you visiting us.
I'm very glad.
It's an interesting concept of brain drain, right?
It is, absolutely.
Is UT Southwestern so strong and able to do all of this work? And I love the idea, the phrase that you use, right? Tech transfer, taking the science that we create and how does one implement it? What do you think happened though? Why does everybody flock to the coasts? Maybe we go right there. Sorry, Claire.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is one of my favorite topics. I can talk about it all day. One of the biggest things that happens is the talent, right? That is one of the things that we know now, 25 years later, that we don't have the scientists who know how to do development science. We have scientists who know how to do discovery science, but we don't have those people that know how to do clin ops and regulatory and manufacturing and things like that.
Sorry, Claire, I'm just going to pause there. Ami and I are both physicians, so if you could just break that down for us a little bit more simply.
Absolutely, I'm sorry.
Like I said, the two categories are.
So there's, within an academic medical center or a research institution, they're doing foundational science, right?
Okay.
So they're doing discoveries where they have identified now a target that for the first time is known to be in this disease process.
Okay.
And so that is the foundation potentially for a company.
Okay.
But to actually turn that into a clinical trial, you have to do the toxicology study, for example.
Okay.
You need to understand what's the right dose.
Okay.
You need to understand, is this something that can be delivered orally or it has to be done IV? Is this something that we can manufacture easily, or is for a small molecule, the synthetic pathway, is it a super complicated pathway, or can we figure out how to make that a little simpler and a little cheaper and make it so that it makes sense financially? What is the regulatory path? Who at the FDA would we talk to? What do the clinical trials look like? What would be an indication that we might go after? All of that is.
This is a lot.
I
This
don't
is a
know.
lot.
I'm currently wondering how any drugs
I
get
know,
into
this is-
development into a patient
Yeah,
if
yeah,
it has to
yeah.
get through this much. This is a lot.
It's a lot.
Okay, and that's not available. I mean, I can't imagine that kind of brain power and talent and pathways available everywhere.
It's not available everywhere.
Okay.
And so, that and the thing is once you have that foundational discovery, you can that science, that foundational observation gets licensed, gets taken or published, and someone just runs with it. But that is a separate step. And that needs to happen in a for-profit entity as a general rule, because that's where you can get the capital. Because in addition to all of those things happening, all of those things are incredibly expensive.
Right.
And so Boston has traditionally had that talent. San Francisco has had that talent. Other places have, smaller amounts of that talent. The Triangle in North Carolina, San Diego. But we have really struggled in North Texas with that talent. And so we're doing a ton of work right now around what is that talent pathway? How do we put programs in place?
And I hear you're actually building it. So if I heard correctly this morning, there's been a large influx of people and money to North Texas in order to do this. Do you want to maybe
Yes,
let's tell the audience
absolutely.
about it? Yeah.
So so about a little over 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to work with a venture fund, a $300 million venture fund called Remeditex Ventures, which is how I ended up at Convergence Forum. So I got to know some of the folks at Convergence Forum, Marion Nikita, Christine Brennan, great friends who we were on boards together with some of our portfolio companies. And we were tasked with not only returning capital with that venture fund, but trying to capitalize on the IP we have at UT Southwestern and other institutions in Texas. And we were unable to do it. We returned capital beautifully. We were not able to build the programs in Texas. So that portfolio, we decided to just let it mature. And we started working with the 1LP for that. It's Lyda Hill Philanthropies. One of my favorite things Lyda did was the If Then initiative. You may have seen those orange statues of the women scientists around in Central Park and the National Mall.
Oh, that's from, I had no idea.
Yes.
Okay. All
And
right.
it was
I love
a
that.
result of the recognition that there's only about 5 statues of real women
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
United States. We have lots of statues of mermaids.
Okay,
right?
I was about to say, so we have fake women.
Yes, no, they're not
Mermaids,
real.
right,
They're
yeah.
not
Oh, wow.
like
There's-
historical figures.
Right.
They're-
Yeah.
Right.
And so they decided that they were going to address that.
Yeah.
And so they
Okay.
made, well over 100 of these statues of amazing scientists,
Oh, that's
women
amazing.
scientists. So we started working on that, and we recognized that there were things that needed to change within the ability to commercialize science out of the universities, but we also needed a place. We needed a place to convene people.
Mhm.
We like to say we needed a place for collisions to happen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
so
Wow.
there was the old ExxonMobil headquarters that was kind of across the street from UT Southwestern.
Okay.
So, an industry that mined value from the ground,
Mm.
and now we're mining value from the mines.
Mm.
Oh, I
And
love
so
it.
it's a 750,000 square foot campus, and Lyda Hill Philanthropies has been instrumental in developing that, and we were able to bring biolabs to town. So we now have a co-working space.
That's
One of
great.
the biggest problems was there was nowhere for these scientific companies to start.
Mm.
Yep.
And so they had to leave because there was no wet lab space. So now we have a place where they can grow a month at a time, a bench at a time. And then we've also partnered with it's traditionally a tech kind of venture fund and accelerator called Capital Factory.
Okay.
Capital Factory has identified that if Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio work together,
Oh,
Texas is the
what
ninth,
power?
the
Yep.
ninth largest economy in the world.
Oh,
Texas
wow.
is.
In the
Right?
world.
In the world. Mhm.
Ninth largest economy in the
Well,
I
Texas
didn't
is
know
huge.
that. I mean, it
Yes.
is, but in the world. that's
Everything's
amazing.
bigger in Texas.
Well,
Right?
that's, I
Oh, my
mean,
goodness.
I wasn't going to We don't do things small. So Capital Factory, they partnered in Austin with the Center for with AFWorks, which is the Force Innovation Arm of
wow.
Futures Command, to build something called the Center for Defense Innovation. So how do you bring these large organizations who don't know how to innovate? How do you bring to them with the innovators? And then the innovators, the entrepreneurs, get their first customer. So that Center for Defense Innovation in Austin has been an incredible success. So in Dallas, in our Pegasus Park project, and y'all can read about it at pegasuspark.com, the Center for Health Innovation is what we're bringing together. So we've got Blue Cross Blue Shield innovation. We've got McKesson. We're still in the market for additional partners to come, but they're doing that. They're bringing their problems to the entrepreneurs and the innovators, specifically around health IT and the human technology interface.
That's fantastic.
And so
I feel like this is a road trip we need to make, Jen. We're Pegasus Project. We're coming. We're
road tripping down to Texas.
We will get you some great barbecue, some great Tex-Mex.
There we go.
So thank you for everyone for watching. As a reminder, we love to have our audience members who are watching our show live tell us who they are, what they're working on, where they're watching from. So Dr. Kamal Lafe, good morning. Thank you for watching. And it looks like we have some questions from the audience. Claire, so you studied in immunology. Immunology has changed so much. Tell us for our doctor audience.
Right.
So break it down a little bit. We have a lot of doctors watching. What is immunology doing now? Really, how do we think about it now? Because it is drastically different than what I learned when I was in med school 20 years ago.
B cells and T cells.
Yeah.
It was only B cells and T cells.
Right. And everything else was kind of disregarded, not very important.
And now there's like extra cells or extra things that help cells.
Yeah, right. All of that. I think when we think about immunology, the big advances in the last 10 years, we've got all the immune checkpoint inhibitors for oncology.
So break that down a little bit for a doctor.
So the immune checkpoint inhibitors are drugs that we're using in cancer to override the tumor's ability to hide from the immune system.
Okay, that was a good
and
explanation.
So that is super important, and so we're getting a lot of impact, especially in those cancers that we know are very cloaked, right? Like things like melanoma that really hide from the immune system, and so we're able to turn those cold tumors, what we call it, hot. But then we also had CAR T cells, where we've actually taken the patient's own T cells and made them specific for the cancer.
Okay, so let's just give our doctor people examples of what the CAR T cell.
A CAR T cell, so typically what we have approved now is for B cell lymphomas, leukemias, where we actually take the T cell out, we make the T cell specific to kill a B cell.
Okay. Wow. We're taking T cells and killing B cells.
Yes.
We didn't see this coming when we were in med school. No. We grouped them together. Now they're
exactly. And so now those T cells go in and they wipe out the cancer. Now they also wipe out all B cells. We can't figure out how to differentiate. But we're working really hard on that. But I think the cool thing is from that knowledge, we're starting to apply that same kind of immune system modulation to things like autoimmune disease. How do we start to use that for autoimmune disease? How do we start to use it for things like organ transplant? Also in immunology, we're doing a ton of work with organ transplant. You probably saw recently somebody got a pig heart.
I did not see that. Okay.
And so they're going in and they're taking the things out of the pig genome that makes the human immune system see it. And so we're starting to really try to understand how can we continue to manipulate the immune system. And I think obviously the mRNA vaccines that came out of COVID, we now have a platform to use those kind of vaccines for a variety of other infectious diseases, but also cancers and other things like that. So I think the knowledge we have around the immune system has just gotten so much more broadly, and we understand how to manipulate it a little bit more effectively.
And I'll go back to the beginning though, what you said though, right? Which is that knowledge has grown, but the ability to turn that into something that can actually be implemented in a time frame that makes sense for patients and patient disease and patient lives and people who are diagnosed with cancer, to know that the advances happen at a pace that perhaps during one's lifetime it will change enough to help them. I think that is one of the most amazing parts of what you've talked about, right? And the development of these drugs.
And I think, ARPA-H is a new federal organization that just recently got approval, and that's one of the things they want to focus on. I think we've asked venture and investors and large pharma to invest in that for a very long time, but I think now that we know what that path is a little more, especially with things like mRNA vaccines or gene therapy or cell therapy, where we know what the drug looks like, we just need to make it for that disease. We need to get some more investment from our federal dollars to help accelerate that pathway.
Yeah, and to almost iterate on it, to be able to say, we've got this one started, let's put the next one in the pipeline and keep going. That's great. Jen, you have some questions there. Sorry. I see them coming in.
I love it.
Fast.
Thanks for everyone for watching. We have Dr. Elizabeth Lewis, who represents Physician Venture. So physicians, I guess, are venturing and putting some bets out there. Thank you, Dr. Lewis, for
What's great about them is they know the problems that need to be solved, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Very good things about us. No, we're curing cancers for the first time, which we never thought was possible in my lifetime. It was a moonshot, and now we're actually doing it.
Yep. And if not curing, we're making it a chronic disease, and that we know how to do, right? And so,
Oh, that's interesting.
Right?
Okay, that's fair. We don't know if we've cured it yet or if it's a chronic disease. That's reasonable. And then we have Mustafa. Am I reading this? Mustafa, thank you for watching from Los Angeles. You are developing womb zipper. So thank you, Mustafa, for watching, and everyone else. Claire told us so much.
I know.
Yeah,
there's a lot to process. We may need to bring Claire back for one of the regular shows too.
Y'all need to come to Pegasus Park. We'll do it from Pegasus Park.
Done.
Oh, that's an invite
first.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
We're going. Watch out, Texas. Here we come.
We'll bring the camera through. We've got about 20 of those orange statues of women out in front. We'll take you through that.
Oh, fantastic.
We should totally do that.
Well,
I love it.
Claire, thank you. Dr.
Well,
Aldridge
thank you.
has really brought, I think, the field very far over her career. She's modest about it, and really recognized the importance of, as you put it, collision, right? And bringing the right people together and giving them the space and then the environment and the permission to think together about how things can be different. Also part of what we love about Scott Kirshner and the the Forum, right?
I'm super excited to be here.
It's fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you
Dr.
for having me and letting me share our
Absolutely.
story.
Thank you, Claire.
All right, take care.
Okay. So
All
who do
right.
we have?
We have Minji next.
Ooh, that's really exciting.
Yes. Going over.
We have so many wonderful people who have flown in from across the country, across the world. So lucky to, I actually don't know where.
Minji's local. However, company's Singapore based, so you were okay.
Okay,
Also
good.
talking about companies coming from everywhere. Minji, maybe for our audience, if you want to introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about how you got to where you are.
Sure. So my name is Minji Kim. I'm a general manager of Alphamet Digital. Alphamet Digital is the subsidiary of the Alphamet Therapeutics. So let me give a few words about the
that'd be
Alphamet
great.
Therapeutics first, and then maybe talk about myself as well. So Alphamet Therapeutic is a global biopharmaceutical company focusing on CNS and ophthalmology space. So the developer. Also, we have medical device and also digital therapeutics in our pipeline. I joined the company as a chief business officer about over a year ago, last year, and I changed my role as a general manager of Alphamet Digital, as I mentioned. So we are very interested in building the digital therapeutics business. So we are actually building the franchise there. A few words of myself. So I'm Korean. Actually, I grew up in Korea, South Korea, and I got my PhD there. And I came to Boston about 20 years ago for my postdoc job at Harvard. And I spent a few years in Alzheimer's research at Harvard. And then I moved to darker side of the industry, if you will. After my MBAs, I went into the big pharma, the business development and the function. So I've been in the global oncology business development group at Roche and Genentech, and then I moved back to Boston, and then just leading the corporate development at a two public biotech company in the area.
That's fantastic. One thing I love about hearing your course, Minji, is how you really take kind of what you initially learned, right, in your postdoc, and then the ability to go from company to company and learn how they do things similarly, how they do things differently. What I'm excited about for our audience too, though, is you had a very traditional course in terms of the companies that you were working with, who were doing traditional oncology, and even your current company started with CNS and ophtho, but in a traditional way. And now we're branching out to digital therapeutics. And there you are going, here, I'm first. Put me in charge and I'm going to make it happen. So will you talk a little bit about that shift that's happening towards digital therapeutics and what that means for you and a company like yours?
Sure. So actually, the digital therapeutics in general is a pretty nascent field,
Yeah.
and I'm very excited about the field. And as you can, see the digital, there's a lot of buzzword about the digital, but there's a lot of unexplored territory that you have to really figure out. So there's a right mix of a risk and benefit and excitement and hurdle. So which I really enjoy to take on. So the digital therapy is the software. We actually, our company, particularly focusing on prescription digital therapeutics, which means that you need to go through the same amount of regulatory, the clearance process. Also, the whole field is working on how to just get access, get the reimbursement. But this is the emerging modality with very different profile as compared to traditional drugs. So
maybe I'm gonna stop you because I can hear Jen telling me to say this, and I hope I'm
You're
going
going
to
to say
For
something?
us regular doctors, can you define digital therapeutics for our audience maybe once before we move on a little bit?
Sure, I
Okay.
know that it's not a very familiar kind of concept. So instead of just giving pill or shot to your patients, for example, especially the mental health, psychiatric or neurological disorders, software, for example, digitize the neuromodulation, the training for cognitive impairment. So that's what we're actually working on. So our company has the two product to address the cognitive impairment in post-stroke cognitive impairment and
Post-stroke.
ADHD.
Cognitive impairment, okay, and ADHD. Okay.
ADHD.
And so you guys have already developed the therapy?
And we are actually in the early stage of the clinical trial in China.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then
So
we are
Pharma
collecting.
doesn't often build their own digital therapeutics.
So yeah, let me get back that. Let me get to that.
Right?
point.
Like they
Yeah.
usually buy a software company who has started to develop digital therapeutics, but you guys are developing your own. Congrats.
So yes, so we let me just correct a little bit there. So we have a very flexible business model.
Okay.
So we building the pipeline perspective, we rely on BD, business development licensing in.
Okay.
So we don't really have the traditional discovery arm.
Yeah.
But we
Okay.
the last year we executed a strategic alliance with a local Chinese company
Okay.
to bring early
Great.
stage product.
Great.
And then we are the partner to really develop, clinical development and the commercialization.
Okay.
So that's the kind of the arrangement. But again, I'm actually building the in-house R&D team as well. So that's another exciting part. But to your point that yes, and a lot of biotech companies focusing on developing the digital therapeutics, and this is a software, not the drug.
Yeah.
But then it could be a very interesting and valuable complementary the treatment options for the cognitive impairment and all the mental health, depression and pain and also. So it's a very interesting area.
So yeah, so and you're in the early stages right now, and I see that Jen's getting some questions and comments too. I'll quickly say you're in the early stages right now. But as we move forward, what I am thinking of, and this is coming from my kind of academic background, is are we really going to do randomized clinical trials of using software as a medical device on top of the current kind of pharma prescription and wait that long for this to get out? Or is there a new model of how we're going to push this forward such that we're not waiting as long for things that could be complementary? What do you think about where we're headed with that?
So especially from the prescription digital therapies perspective, to your point that we need to go through the clinical trial and get the FDA the approval. Most of the companies run like randomized clinical the trial. Obviously, the big the hot topic is what control are we going to use? So there are a lot of different debate and all that. So without getting into too much details, but clearly you really have to demonstrate clinical effectiveness and then also safety. The issues obviously as compared to the invasive drug, non-invasive, the digital option is has very good efficacy and safety profile. So again, the whole field is actually trying to demonstrate the data and the clinical effectiveness, but also the cost effectiveness, right? So that's another another kind of very important data point. So this digital therapeutic is an evidence based, the software, to address the mental and chronic disorders.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's really important.
That's great.
Yeah. So it's brand new. We were out the other night and talking to another pharmaceutical company, and they ran a digital clinical trial. And so they had to give iPads to their patients, and one patient hit someone else with the iPad, and they had to log that as an adverse event.
One patient hitting someone with the iPad, that's an adverse event. Oh, that is classic.
They're the partner.
That's
just the unexpected things that you don't know.
You didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
That's not where I thought you were going with this.
Oh, really?
No,
I mean, iPads are dangerous.
So I thought you were talking about something else that we talked about is when we had the digital twin conversation, and could you use software as a medical device and trial it on digital twins to be able to move things a little bit faster, right? And maybe even guarantee more safety because you're not actually doing it on someone, you're doing it on their digital twin.
Yeah.
I don't know,
There's a digital twin, and then there's a trial recently that actually used a sham app. Like, I don't know what a sham app is, but one that's not actually
Digital
effectively.
sham.
Okay.
You call it digital.
Is that Roblox? Because that's what I feel like is happening in my house. Digital sham. I'm being shammed every day by people who say they're doing homework, but actually it's Roblox. I shouldn't say. But
really, your kids have gotten to the point where they have robots doing their home. That we should be like they have a new job, like a pathway.
There you go.
So we are going to hear a little bit more, but we want to just thank everyone who's watching, and to remind everyone again, we are live and recorded. So yes, Dr. Ramolafe, we are recorded, so you can watch after the fact or share with your friends, colleagues. But we also love to hear from you live, and if you have any questions. And yes, thank you. So back to that. I would love to hear, and I think our audience would love to hear, there's so much hype around digital therapeutics. I guess one question is, how does the Asian market differ from the US market? Because US is different now. We finally got an FDA pathway in the last 2 years. So you can get software as a medical device. You can get an FDA cleared. We have CMS isn't fully walking in that space, but AMA, American Medical Association, is like, yes, we will work with you to create CPT codes.
Yep.
So they have a dedicated division for this. Now, for the first time ever, we have the NIH actually has calls for funding for digital therapeutics. National Science Foundation has calls for digital therapeutics, and BARDA. So we are in a different era just in the last 2 years. How is the US different, and how is Asia different? And who's going faster?
You're going to go right there. That's great.
I think that's a very interesting and important question, but also difficult question to answer.
Sure.
Right? So as you can imagine, that it's digital therapeutic is very, very sensitive to the cultural and the local, adaptation perspective. So even you start with the same product, as you develop, as you actually improve the product design in different country,
culturally relevant.
It could be very completely different product.
Yeah.
So that being said, that maybe I should say that like we are based in like China and US.
Okay.
So our aspiration is to just leverage the global understanding, but also effectively adapt to the local market so that we can improve the product. So then we may end up with a two different product at the end.
Yeah.
So going back to your question,
so it also takes you closer to precision medicine when you can adapt a product because of local population.
Exactly. So I guess so far, not many companies have really adapted the AI machine learning component during the clinical trial. But after the label, obviously, AI machine learning can really personalize the experience with the digital therapeutics. But going back to your questions about all the regulatory or the policy environment in each country is still ongoing. So as you can see that the bipartisan registration for CMS to support the PDT, prescription digital therapeutics, just the news came out like last March. So the U.S. is, I would say, is a very leading position, and
Okay.
also the
Okay.
Germany is in the leading
Yeah,
position.
because of their psych app stores.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The Germans are always leading in something. They have it right. There's something that they have right there.
So explain the German
But then-
position, because my understanding is that they were first to actually have like a government licensed app store for mental health, and they
Right.
had guaranteed coverage, I think, for the first year or two.
Right. Actually, I'm not really that familiar.
Sure.
But then that the German is to your point that has established the government support.
Yes.
supporting the
Mhm.
system.
Yeah.
That we are actually building here in the U.S. In China, I mean, it's still kind of very unknown. Like a lot of things going on, but then the more like government is initiated. The pathway for reimbursement still kind of pretty pretty unknown
Right.
field.
Yeah.
Right.
So having said that, who's
Huh.
getting there first? Actually,
Hard
I
to
don't
say.
know.
Yeah,
So, and also there are like so many different business model within digital therapeutics.
Yeah.
So obviously the payer reimbursement is one way, but then also the consumer product in the business model is another a way
Right.
to just adapt. So again, this is a very interesting early phase of the digital space.
Yeah.
And it's all kind
No,
of
it's exciting. I'm excited for you to have this position and lead it and take it forward. Jen, I can't see the time because I'm getting old. My eyes just can't do it. Do we know how much more time we have? I have one more question if there's time.
Yes, we have time.
Okay, so when we think about the mental health space, right, and even the neuro space, one thing we find, and I guess this is true for cardiology, nephrology as well, you have overlapping disease.
right.
So if we're
Comorbid.
thinking about digital therapeutics and we're attacking just one diagnosis, it is likely that that patient has multiple diagnoses. When we do with medication, I think it's a little bit different. I feel like I see an opportunity with digital therapeutics to start very quickly layering on. If you have this combination of things, we can do this. If you have that combination of diseases, and personalizing in that way. Am I wrong? Are we closer? Can we move faster there than we can with pills? Or
No, I guess you're absolutely right. I think the for example, the cognitive impairment condition is not only associated with stroke or ADHD, right?
Yeah.
And also the depression. If you actually have the app to address your depression, they can be treated for cancer patients or any other the PTSD or the PTD or the MDD. So there are very different types of quote unquote indications. So this is broad comorbid. The perspective allows digital therapies to expand quote unquote indications. And so I think that could be a great opportunity. So once you prove your efficacy of the product, then there's a lot of different way to expand and then the access to the broader patient population.
It's interesting when we just had our last guests on, we were talking about telemedicine. Scott, who was here first with us, and one of the conversations today will be, what did COVID change, right? And for those of us who are telemedicine enthusiasts, it's like a little sad, right? We really did great, and then that particular thing of virtual video visits came down, not the whole field, and is settling somewhere. As that happens, care at home is becoming a much bigger area where those of us who play in telemedicine are playing now, right? And thinking about what did we want to do with video? We wanted to provide high quality care in the communities where people live. Now we're moving to a care at home model for that. And as I think about digital therapeutics, I think, I probably don't need to lay hands on you to evaluate you for some of these diseases, to get the testing or the metrics that show me what's happening, and then to have you engage with something that makes you better. Can a lot of this be done both trial-wise and then treatment-wise with the patient staying in their own community?
Yeah, I guess the non-centralized and clinical trial, I think that's the kind of whole concept of these days after the COVID, right? So I think from the implementation perspective, the digital may have a little bit of benefit
Yeah,
to
a little
that.
advantage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But also, not only the clinical development, but there's a huge shortage of the the therapists or the healthcare the staff to support the whole community, and also when it comes to the mental health, there's a social stigma as well. So there's a lot of the nuance behind it, and then the profile of software like an app-based treatment option can address some of those, and so that people can access to those potential treatment options more easily.
Yeah. I'm going to just take 2 seconds to say you have 3 Asian women from different areas sitting up here talking about mental health.
Okay.
Which
we're
is
talking,
because
we're talking about mental health.
Which is, I think really important because we talk about culturally sensitive, culturally relevant.
Yep.
Right.
That used to be something that you had to be very culturally sensitive about. And now we're changing the terminology to culturally aware, please.
Exactly.
Right? Not sensitive, but aware of mental health. And it's a real change that I think we need to continue to make and to make that a conversation that is comfortable for people over time, because it is a disease and it needs treatment, and there are great companies working on it. So I'm sorry, I just miniature soapbox had to do that to us. Can I ask you about the VA? Because you talked about PTSD a little bit, and you are now leading Dr. Joe. Right?
No, we're on live TV.
Oh, sorry.
And I do not have approval from the VA to talk.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
We will
not do that. Never mind. I should say by saying anything we say here has to do with just us and not the companies with which we work. And I will take back that question.
So remember, Dr. Bhatt also works for Mass General. I also work for the VA, which is the largest healthcare system in the world.
Yes.
We do not speak on behalf of them, and they
we go.
And oftentimes we need approval to say certain things.
Yes. However, I can say, not working for the VA, very excited to hear where digital therapeutics for mental health may go and how they may help the people who have given their lives to help us.
Yeah.
Good.
So super exciting. We're excited to be here at day 1 of the Convergence Forum at the Gray Lady, or this incredibly
on
foggy,
gorgeous Cape Cod, where the fog is rising. It is rising. The ocean is there now. It has improved.
And we're just excited to be with some of the best, the brightest, the leading trailblazers in how we're treating patients, how we're making care more patient-centric, how we're going to the patient, how we're breaking down barriers. One example is providing mental health awareness and options and availability, especially to certain cultures, and I will just speak on behalf of my culture, that has difficulty talking about it, but we know it's a big problem. So excited to be with the leaders here in the Cape, learning more. And we're going to hear from them. But be sure to stay tuned, because we will be live again tomorrow, but an hour earlier, I believe.
An hour earlier. But recorded, should you want to watch it later during the day. And in the meantime, we'll be on hashtag CVForum22.
Correct.
Hashtag CVForum22 to see what's going on here and hear about the conversations. And one of Scott Kirshner and Shane Gilbert, who lead this event, one of their favorite things is what are those key phrases? What are those key phrases that come out of the conference that everybody can come together? We were talking about collision earlier with Dr. Aldrich, and like thinking about what are those key phrases that bring everybody together? What are those concepts? And I love every year seeing what concepts come out of Convergence Forum. So hashtag CVForum22. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you
and,
for having me.
And be sure to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Thank you.
And thank you to our audience.
Thank you. And I'm doing some